Welcome back to the Get House podcast, brought to you by GetHouseSurvey.ie. I'm your host Noel, and in this episode, which is the first episode of season 2 of the Get House podcast, which we're incredibly excited about, we're going to be talking about house surveys. So you might know them as pre-purchase surveys, as engineers' reports, as structural surveys, or a few other names. But when it comes to buying a second-hand property, they're all essentially the same thing. So over the last few months, we've been collecting all of the most commonly asked questions about house surveys. We've been asking you on our social media. We've been collecting our questions from our customers through our normal support channels. And we've been looking at the podcast feedback and picking up some of the questions through there. So over the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to go through a bunch of those questions, and in doing so, give you the insight you need into house surveys and what they are. If you are in the process of buying a house, if you're in any bidding wars, and especially if you've just gone sale agreed, house surveys are going to be coming up very soon for you. So this is a really important episode. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. So we'll jump straight into question 1, and that is, what is a house survey and do I have to get one? That's really 2 questions in one. We'll start with the do I have to get one part first. The straight answer to that is, in most cases, no. A house survey is not a legal requirement. You don't have to get one. In many cases, it's advised you get one, and in some circumstances, which we'll touch on later on, the bank who's lending you your mortgage will request you have one done. And in a lot of cases, your solicitor will actually advise you get one done to check to check certain issues or certain planning regulations and so on. So what it is, it's a full visual inspection of the condition of the property you're buying. And when we say a visual inspection of the condition of the property you're buying, the surveyor will go through every single room. They'll do a walk around of the outside of the house and the ground it's on. They'll climb up into the attic to have a look. They will take down detailed notes of every single part of the property and the condition it's currently in. And they'll flag any areas of concern where they feel the condition is not up to standard. And that's the written report you get at the end. It's conducted by a qualified surveyor. And a qualified surveyor, they come from several different fields. So the surveyors we have on our panel are made up of engineers. They're made up of chartered surveyors who have moved into building surveying. They're made up of architects, or builders who have been in the game a long time and have certain qualifications on top of their experience. And then, you know, the second part of that question was, do I have to get one? And it is. Technically, it's no. However, we always like to use the car analogy when we're explaining this one. And if you think of buying a second-hand car, if you're going to pay $300,000 or $400,000 for a second-hand car, you're going to want a mechanic to come along and check it out. That mechanic will check to see if the car works. They'll check the condition of the car. But the most important thing is they'll check the health and safety of the car. You know, is it actually safe to drive? And that's essentially what you're paying for a house survey. You're paying for a person who's an expert in the build, in the maintenance, in the refurbishment of properties, and they'll come out and they'll give you their expert opinion on the condition so that you can make an informed decision on whether or not to proceed with the sale. But I've had a quick sneak peek at some of these questions, and we're going to go into a bit more detail on that further down. So let's jump into question 2, which is, what kind of survey do I need when buying a house? So this is kind of straightforward. So if you're buying a second-hand property, you need a house survey, which technically is a type 2 survey, and that's based on the SCSI standard guide for what a type 2 survey is. SCSI is the Society for Chartered Surveyors Ireland. They set the guidelines for what a property should be, what a property survey or house survey should be, type 2, and any good house surveyor will make sure that their surveys are up to that SCSI type 2 standard. So that's a type of survey you need. Most companies don't call it a type 2 survey. They call it a pre-purchase survey, a house survey, a structural report, an engineer's report, a building survey. But they're all should be up to the SCSI type 2 standard. So question 3, what is the difference between a house survey and a snag list? Okay, this is straightforward enough. A snag list is for new builds, and a house survey, or any of the other names we went through, is for a second-hand property. The big difference there is a snag list is on a new build, and it's done just before the builders hand the property over to you, so just before you get the keys. And it's essentially a list of all of the problems with the finish, and it might be a light switch missing, it might be a chip in a door, it might be a window not closing properly, or the more important part, a lot of health and safety issues. A window upstairs isn't fully open, and you'll give that completed snag list back to the builder. The builder will fix all of those issues, and then once those issues are fixed, then the property can be handed over to you. The thing about a snag list is, and the big difference between a snag list and a house survey, is a snag list, it's a new build, and so the property won't have all of the wear and tear issues that come along with age. A lot of structural issues will only show up after 5, 10, 15 or more years, and a new build won't show up any of those issues. That's usually covered under the guarantees you get with the builders. So a house survey a snag list is really just to make sure that the property that's being handed over to you, it's a new property, is in pristine condition, and the build is up to a very high standard, and it meets all health and safety regulations. And a house survey goes on to look at the condition of a property and wear and tear issues that can happen over time. So next question, what's included in a survey? We kind of touched on this earlier on, but the survey itself is a written report that you get sent back at the end, and in order to do that written report, the surveyor has to visit the property, and he or she will kind of report back on the condition of the overall structure of the property. So all of the walls, are there any cracks that are cause for concern in the walls? Are there any foundational issues which are starting to show up? Is the roof sound? They'll look on the inside of the roof. Is it going to collapse in the next few years? Does it need to be replaced? They'll go through each individual room, and they'll comment on the condition of the room. Now, most secondhand properties, a lot of them will be quite dated, and they'll have old wallpaper, and the comments might be as insignificant as it's in need for refurbishment or redesigning. That's what you're hoping for in a survey. But they'll also go down and they'll check for things like damp. It is a visual survey, but all surveyors nowadays carry a damp meter, and they actually check the damp levels on each wall in each room. So they'll check for damp issues. They'll include that in the report. They will look at any boundary structures. So boundary structures are walls, fences, gates around the outside of the property. They'll make sure that they're safe and in good condition. Any outbuildings like sheds, or if there's a granny flat on the property, they'll look at that as well, and they'll comment on any planning concerns that might pop up. So the most common planning concerns are extensions and things like attic conversions. So for example, an estate agent might list a property as a 3-bedroom house. One of those bedrooms happens to be an attic, but if that attic doesn't have a certain amount of roof space that's a certain height, if it doesn't have the right windows to be able to exit in an emergency, and if it's not built to a certain standard, it cannot technically be called a bedroom. So items like that they'll look at. And in the case of our own house, actually, we had an interesting situation, and our solicitor actually asked our surveyor to look at this. So in our property, there was a garage on the side, and that garage had been converted into a room, and the back, which was a utility room, was converted into a kitchen. And because it was a garage, the roof was lower. And because the roof was lower, if that roof wasn't a certain height, technically it wouldn't have been a legal conversion. So the surveyor checked that out. He checked the height, and everything was fine for us, luckily. So the surveyor was able to say, yep, that's up to standard, and our solicitor was happy. So there's a whole range of issues that I check. So the condition, the boundaries, planning, any planning concerns, and it's really a full breakdown of the condition of the property. It's without breaking down walls and without digging up foundations. It's as thorough as you can get. So next question. We're on to page 2 here already. What are the most common issues found in surveys? Okay, I actually wrote a blog post on this a few months ago, so I should be able to remember a bunch of the issues from that. So luckily, the vast majority of issues found in house surveys are quite minor. They'd be classed as kind of cosmetic issues or issues that are very low cost to remedy. Some of those could be things like insulation in the attic. So the attic might be, might not have had any new insulation put in since it was built 40 years ago. And so there'd be a lot of heat escaping through. So once the surveyor sticks his head up into the attic and he can see the insulation, he'll be able to tell you if it needs to be redone. And in a lot of cases with old houses, it does, because it's not something that people update in their houses very often. One that popped up on our own house survey was the gutters. So the gutters were overflowing with moss and leaves, and they're actually cracked in some places. And if you think about it, if you know you're going to sell your property, big maintenance things like that, like maintaining your gutters or cleaning them out, you might kind of just let that slide. And so a surveyor will always spot issues like that, and even moss on the roof. So some roofs, if they've got quite a low pitch, moss grows on them quite easily, and moss growing on roof tiles is an issue because it gets into the grooves, and as that moss is full of moisture, and as that expands and contracts with the cold, it causes your roof tiles to crack or dislodge, and it can cause a lot of issues. Damp is one of the most common issues that pops up, but thankfully there's lots of different types of damp. There's damp that can be caused by a roof in your ceiling. There's damp that can be caused by leaking pipe work. But a lot of it is down to things like poor ventilation. Maybe a vent was blocked up and the room isn't getting the right ventilation. So damp is one of the most common issues in older properties. However, a lot of the time it's quite a minor cause for that damp, and so it's easily remedied. And then one of the things that I was really surprised with this when I started in Get House Survey and I started to see all the different reports that were coming through, but it's unsealed openings. And say you have a kitchen and there's a pipe going from the back of the sink to the outside, and then the kitchen is rearranged and there's a new pipe put to the outside and a new hole made for that pipe. You'll be surprised at the amount of times the old hole in the wall isn't patched up, and it's called an unsealed opening. And that's one example of an unsealed opening. There are many. And when you have an unsealed opening to the outside, damp can get in, water can get in, rodents can get in, insects can get in. And actually one of the more bizarre cases we had, it was the start of last year, I think, our surveyor sent back the report. The house was actually in really good condition, apart from a spider infestation in the kitchen. And that was caused by an unsealed opening to the back garden where there's lots of trees and bushes, and spiders just decided to crawl through and make the kitchen their home. I'm pretty glad I wasn't out on site with him that day. So yeah, unsealed openings is a common one. And then before I go on to the next question, what other common issues are there? Internal doors. You'll be surprised at the amount of internal doors that over the years no longer close properly, or the handles are broken on them, and it might be the spring in the handle is gone. And again, using my own house as an example, when we bought our house, there was about 5 or 6 internal doors that didn't actually close properly. So I went on a mission of opening up the handles, trying to fix what I could. I had to borrow a planer to kind of fit the doors back into shape, and I done an awful job at that because I'd never done it before. But that's actually a really common issue, is internal doors don't fit. And then for external doors and windows, the rubber seals around them, it's very, very common that they break down. So if you get new double glazed windows, they're going to be sealed really, really, really nicely. But after 5, 10, 15 years, the rubber seals of them start to break down, and that lets drafts in, it lets some damp in. And luckily, that's a really easy remedy. So you can buy new seals in any DIY store yourself. You can get a window fitter out to fix them up for you and put proper rubber seals back on. But that's a really common one as well, and thankfully easy to remedy. So next question, how long will the surveyor be on site? So this really depends on the size and the condition of the property. So if the surveyor is going out to a small 40 square meter, 1-bedroom apartment, they'll probably do that in 30 or 40 minutes. If it's a big property with 20 rooms, they might be out there for several hours. And it depends on the condition as well. So if there's very little wrong with the property and they have to take down very few notes, or they have to investigate very few things, they might only be out there for an hour or two. If there's a lot to investigate and it's full of issues and full of things they need to investigate, they'll be out there for longer. So there's no kind of straightforward answer to this. It depends on the size of the property and the condition of the property. Next question. How long is the written survey? So again, this depends on the size and condition of the property. If it's a larger property with 20 rooms, the written survey is going to be quite long because they need to comment on each room. If the property has very little wrong with it, the survey will be quite short. The surveyor can only write conditional issues into the report if they're there. If the room is absolutely in perfect condition, if the structure's sound and if the roof is perfect and there's no planning issues, no health and safety issues, they'll just mention that they've checked X, Y, and Z and there's no issues found, or it's in satisfactory condition. Now, if there's a lot of issues found in the property, the survey can get very long, and I've seen surveys up to 28, 30 pages long. I don't think the buyers went through with those sales. And on the other side of things, I've seen older properties that have been kept in really good condition, really well maintained. There's nothing wrong with them. They're almost show house condition from the structure and the internal finish, and those reports might only be 5 to 10 pages long. So again, it really depends on the size of the property and the condition of the property. Next question. When should I book a house survey? Okay, so this is one of the most common questions we get. We've got a standard reply in our customer support software because this question comes in so often. So you should book a house survey after you go sale agreed and when you've had your initial chat with your solicitor. So you don't want to buy a house survey before you go sale agreed, because if you are still in a bidding war, you get a house survey done, you might be outbid, they might accept somebody else's offer, and then you are out of pocket, regardless of what the survey came back with. If you wait till you go sale agreed, then a whole process kicks in, where you speak to your solicitor, you start to get the bank involved to move closer to drawdown, and after you've spoken to your solicitor, you've talked to them about the property. They'll raise any concerns that they want you to ask your surveyor. You get in touch or you hire your surveyor. You have a chat. You give them the details of the property. You have a chat with them about any additional concerns you have, and then the surveyor does the survey, gets the written report back to you, and then before you sign contracts. So after you go sale agreed, but before you sign contracts, when you get your survey back, you've as clear a picture as you're going to get of the condition of the property, and that should give you everything you need to know about whether you're willing to continue with the sale and sign those contracts. So when should I book a house survey? It's after you go sale agreed and after you've had your first chat with your solicitor. Does the vendor have to let me survey their house? Okay, I know why this one was put in. This has happened, I've seen this happen twice in the 3 years I've been with GetHouseSurvey. So the straightforward answer is no. The person selling the home does not have to let a surveyor into the house to view the property. However, if the person you're buying from won't let you get the house surveyed or won't let a surveyor access the property, there's only two reasons I can think of why that would happen. One of them is there's something to hide and they don't want a surveyor to spot it, and they don't want a surveyor to find it and tell you about it. And the other one is they might not want to sell the house. They might be forced to put the house up against their wishes. There could be all sorts of reasons for that happening. It's a weird one. So technically no. And the recent example we had, it happened once last year, but the recent example we had, buyer came on, booked a survey with us. Our surveyor called up the estate agent, booked it in for, say, a Tuesday morning, like 10 o'clock Tuesday morning. The surveyor turned up and the buyer said, I can't let you into the property because I have to be here for some reason. And the surveyor said, okay, went off to his next job, got back in touch with the estate agent. The estate agent said, okay, that's weird, booked it in for the next week. The surveyor came along again and the buyer wouldn't let him in again and gave some other crazy reason. And then a day later, the buyer pulled out of the sale. So the buyer was trying to slow play we don't know the reason. It could have been anything. So one thing I would say though is, if the buyer is not allowing you to have a house survey done and they're trying to push through the sale, run a mile from it. There's no good reason why they won't let a survey be done. Or if there is a good reason, email us and tell me about it, because I can't think of one. But technically, no, they don't have to let the surveyor on the property. Next question is, should I pay the booking deposit before or after the survey? Okay, this is kind of like, when do I book a house survey? So to go sale agreed, you have to pay your booking deposit. And when you pay your booking deposit and you've agreed a price and the whole lot, that's when you go sale agreed. So yeah, the house survey is after you pay your booking deposit. So again, after you pay your booking deposit, you're then technically sale agreed. Speak to your solicitor, see if they have any concerns they want checked out, then book your house survey. Okay, so so this is I suppose I should be honest with this question, but why are house surveys so expensive? I've got quotes from 400 to 800 €800 excluding VAT, and this one was from one of the Instagram posts I think we put up. So why are house surveys so expensive? So there's lots of costs that go into house survey. So you might think, right, it takes a surveyor a few hours to do it, and then maybe, I don't know, another few hours to type up the report. But there's a lot of other costs on top of that. So there's the insurance costs. So any surveyor you go with should be carrying PI insurance, professional indemnity insurance. Unfortunately, like a lot of industries in Ireland, insurance costs have rocketed over the last few years. All of our surveyors have reported that's gone up recently because they carry their own their own personal insurance. Even regardless of whether there's been any claims against them or not over the years, it's just always gone up. So insurance cost is probably the biggest cost contributing to the price. Travel. If you're a surveyor working in Dublin City, you're probably not going to have to travel too much. If you're a surveyor working in Cork and Kerry, you could be traveling 2 or 3 hours between each survey. And so there's a lot of travel costs involved there, which, surveyors obviously need to account for. VAT. So, surveyor is a service. So there's VAT included in the price. All of our prices include VAT. Like a lot of services, sometimes the prices won't include VAT, and you'll have to add VAT on at the end. But VAT has to be considered in there. And then, like a lot of industries, you're paying for the expertise for the surveyor. So there's a lot of fancy kind of analogies around this, and I'll try not to use them. But our surveyors, for example, all have a minimum of 10 years experience. Without that experience, they would not be able to do what they do, or at least up to the standard that they do it. And so you're not just paying for the surveyor for 2 hours or 4 hours, whatever it is. You're paying for their expertise, which they've built up over many years. They've got many qualifications. They've slogged it out on building sites. They've spent hours studying whatever courses it is to get their qualifications. So there's a lot of expertise that you're paying for there as well. It's not just the surveyor's time. So yeah, insurance costs, VAT, travel, and then you're paying for a premium service. You're paying for somebody with a lot of experience. Having said that, just looking back at the question, they've got quotes from 400 to 800 excluding VAT. So 800 excluding VAT would come in close to €1,000 with VAT. Don't pay that for your house survey. That's way too much. Even if you're buying a giant mansion, you don't want to be paying that. But 400 plus VAT, that would be a pretty good price. A lot of independent surveyors, you'd probably get that price with. But yeah, there's a wide range in prices, and unlike a lot of other services and products in Ireland, Dublin is probably the cheapest because it's so compact. Surveyors don't have to travel as far. They can get around more surveys a week. But when you go further out into the country and it's more rural, surveyors tend to charge more. So it's kind of the opposite to a lot of other industries. But with GetHouse Survey, we've got set prices up front. It is $550 for a property up to 200 square meters and $650 for a property over that up to 350 square meters. So that includes VAT, so upfront prices. So make sure you have a look at us when you're booking your survey. What should I look out for when hiring a surveyor? Okay. So this is something that we know very well in GetHouse Survey. So when we started GetHouse Survey, we wanted to try to fix one small pain point in the house buying journey. And myself and my business partner Owen, we had both recently gone through the process, and luckily we knew a surveyor who was our other partner in setting up the business, and we were able to talk to him talk to him about it in great detail. And when people are trying to find a surveyor, you may never have heard of a house survey or a house surveyor or a building surveyor up until a few days ago. And all of a sudden you have to try to find one who is qualified, who has the experience, who's registered, who carries their insurance. And you have to ask them all these questions. But with GetHouse Survey, we make sure that the surveyors all check those boxes, so you don't have to worry about it. You book with us, we vet all the surveyors, and you can make sure that they check all those criteria. But when you're shopping around, when you're reaching out to all these companies, they need to be registered with a governing body, and that could be SCSI, which is the Society for Chartered Surveyors in Ireland. It could be the IEI, which is the Irish Engineering Institute. You want to make sure they're experienced. They technically don't need to have experience, but you want to make sure that they do, and they've got a lot of surveys under their belt. Recommended or well reviewed. Check their online reviews. But having said that, a lot of independent surveyors won't have websites, and so they might not have Google reviews. So word of mouth is also really important. Ask your solicitor if they can recommend anybody. Ask your friends and family who have recently bought a house if they were happy with their surveyor, and maybe reach out to them. Recommended or well reviewed is one. And their own insurance. I said this earlier on, and it's really, really important. Make sure that either they carry their own PI insurance, their own professional indemnity insurance, or the company that they work for, the surveying company, has insurance that covers them. Next question. Do banks require a house survey? So the answer to this is sometimes. Sometimes a bank will ask you before they let you draw down the mortgage to have a house survey complete. Every bank is different. Some don't at all. But the reasons why a bank might ask for you to have a house survey complete, if the property is over a certain age, I think there's a couple of banks, if the property is over 50 years old, they will automatically ask you to have a house survey complete. The location of the property, so they might be concerned that it's on a floodplain. They might be concerned that it's in a location that's been affected by pyrite or more recently mica, and to confirm the legality of any renovation work. So like the example I gave earlier on, if it's a 3-bedroom house but one of those bedrooms is a converted attic, they might want to make sure that that's up to standard and it can actually be classed as a bedroom. And the reason that the bank will ask this is they're lending you a lot of money, and the guarantee for that is the property, and they'll want to make sure that the property is up to standard and that it can basically stand up against the loan that they're giving you. So do banks require a house survey? So sometimes it's probably less than 50% of cases, actually a lot less than 50% of cases, but sometimes they do. And if the surveyor is registered, if they carry their insurance, the bank will accept the survey. So next question, can I talk with the surveyor before and after the survey? So yes, and you should. So before the survey is conducted, you want to raise any specific concerns you have with the surveyor. If your solicitor has asked the surveyor to check, I'll use that example again, the legality of the attic conversion, or any, if there's been an extension on the house, is it up to standard? You'll want to flag that with the surveyor beforehand. Now, most likely they'll know if the extension was put on afterwards, and they'll comment on it anyway, but it's still something you want to go through. Or when you were visiting the property and you were on a viewing and you spotted something yourself that you weren't sure of, maybe you'll just want to ask the surveyor to have an extra look at it. And then after the survey is complete, so when you get your written report back, there's going to be a lot of phrases and a lot of terminology on there which you may have never heard of before. And especially if it's your first time buying a property, there's going to be a lot of new things in there to you. Some of it you might pick up and understand. Other phrases you might not. So if there's anything on your survey that you are not sure of or that you want more detail from, you need to be able to speak to the surveyor who was there going through the survey. So yes is a short answer. You can speak to your surveyor before and after, and you should, especially if you have any questions or you're not 100% sure on something. If you're booking with a company and they don't let you speak to the surveyor, just run a mile, because you won't get that extra insight and that extra service that you need when you're making such a big investment. Can I attend a survey? Okay, it depends when you're listening to this. During COVID, no, the surveyor can't bring you on a walkthrough of the property after the survey. In normal circumstances, yes, but don't turn up if the surveyor says he's starting the survey at 2:00. Don't turn up at 2:00. Let them complete the survey first. Meet them afterwards, and then the surveyor can bring you through and show you any issues they found in person. And speak to the surveyor beforehand. Say you want to go to attend the survey, and they'll let you know roughly what time to turn up. But don't turn up when they start the survey. I'm like this. If I'm doing a piece of work, I can't do that properly with somebody standing over my shoulder. Surveyors are the exact same. They need the time and focus and to be able to give their attention 100% to what they're surveying, and not to talking to somebody through what they're doing. So yes, under normal circumstances outside of COVID, you can, but speak to the surveyor beforehand to find out what time to turn up. And to be really honest, before COVID, a lot of people use this as an opportunity to get an extra sneaky viewing of the property. We done that. So yes, normal circumstances, absolutely. But during COVID, the surveyor can't bring you through the property on a walkthrough. They can talk to you afterwards in the garden, but they can't bring you through the property. Sorry, that's the end of that page. Can the surveyor give estimated costs of work to be done or costs to renovate a property? So these won't be on the report. So say, for example, I can give you a few different examples here, but say the surveyor flags that the property needs a new roof. The roof is about to collapse. On the report, the surveyor, under the section for the roof, they'll comment that the roof is in dangerous condition, or it's in condition that's imminent collapse, or whatever terminology they use. They won't write on the report a new roof will cost you 20,000. Having said that, the surveyors have been in the game for a long time, and they've dealt with roofs that need to be replaced. They've dealt with lots of builders. They've dealt with lots of quantity surveyors who price up things. So if anything like that pops up on your survey, call the surveyor afterwards and ask them for their opinion. And surveyors are people too. They'll tell you their honest opinion, and if they know, they'll tell you. But it won't be in the written report. If you're buying a property and knowing that it will need a lot of renovation work done, you'll want a quantity surveyor or a builder to go out, talk to you about the renovation work that needs to be done, and give you an estimate for the works. So to have written estimates for the cost of works to be done, it's technically a different thing, but talk to your surveyor after the survey is complete. They might be able to give you a figure based on their experience, but it won't be on the written report. It will only be just kind of chatting to them afterwards. So if something serious shows up during the survey, can I renegotiate the price? This is a difficult one at the moment. So technically, yes. If to use the roof example again, if the surveyor flags that, look, the roof needs to be replaced, you can go back to the seller or the person negotiating on their behalf, the estate agent, and say, look, we offered 350,000, but it's going to cost 25,000 to replace the roof, so we'll offer you 325,000, and they may accept that. However, in today's climate, and this is the second half of 2021, the housing market is kind of crazy for buyers at this time. There's bidding wars going like 30-40% over the asking price. The seller may not want to negotiate. They may just say, no, we'll just go on to the next buyer. But having said that as well, sellers are people. Most of them are incredibly decent. We deal with them a lot day to day as well. So it's worth trying, but it's not a guarantee. They don't have to knock 25,000 off just because the property needs a new roof for 25,000. But technically, yes, you can use the survey as a tool to renegotiate the price. Will this survey tell me if the property has pyrite or mica? House survey is not a definitive test for pyrite or mica. So what the surveyor can do is they'll be able to, and sorry, the reason it's not a definitive test is because for you to get 100% confirmation that the property is impacted by either pyrite in the foundations or mica in the blocks, it has to be done with a lab test. So they'll have to take samples of the foundations or the blocks, send them off to a lab, and have it tested. That's pretty costly, and it's something that takes sometimes weeks to turn around, and so that's not included in the house survey. However, a house surveyor will notice signs of pyrite. So if the house has started to be affected by pyrite, for example, usually the first signs show up in the larger gable walls. And pyrite, because pyrite expands the foundation, the walls kind of billow out and they form a very distinctive kind of grid-like cracking pattern. And the surveyors will be able to identify that. And when they see that, they'll know, okay, this type of cracking is caused by the foundations expanding. And therefore, if the property was built in this area which was impacted by pyrite, and it was built during these years which were impacted by pyrite, there's a high chance this is affected by pyrite, and they will raise that concern on the report, but they will not say it is 100% this property has pyrite or it's 100% this property doesn't have pyrite, because that has to be done with a lab test. But surveyors are all experts at this. If there are any visible signs of pyrite there, they'll pick them up, they'll include them on the report. And what I actually find fascinating about the surveyors is they can actually tell different types of cracks, what causes them. And sometimes it's just cosmetic, it's just on the outside plaster. That's all that's cracked. Other times they'll be able to see if it's caused by the foundation sinking, if it's caused by pyrite, if it's caused by mica, which I think a lot of people would have seen examples of that in the news lately. So they'll be able to tell you if there's any signs of pyrite, but it's not a definitive test for pyrite. That has to be done with a separate lab test. So they are all the questions regarding house surveys. But because I work for a GetHouse Survey, there was a few GetHouse Survey specific questions that came through when we asked, so I thought I'd include them. Too. So one of them is, why do you charge up front? So GetHouse Survey might be the only company who asks for the full fee for the survey up front. Some companies ask for deposits, others don't ask at all, and they only ask for the payment after the survey is complete. And then what other companies will do is they'll say, okay, the house survey has been complete, we have the report ready to go, send a bank transfer or whatever across, and then we'll send you the report. The reason we ask for the payment up front is because first of all, it speeds up the whole process. You can pay by credit or debit card. When the report's done, the minute the surveyor completes the report and they sign it at the end, it's emailed straight across to you. There's no, okay, the report's ready, send us across the money and we'll give it to you. It speeds up the whole process. So when you book with us, you'll have a form and that will take you through to the checkout. You pay, and then everything just happens automatically after that. We take care of every single step along the way. We assign a surveyor, the next surveyor in your area. We let you know, hey, your survey has been assigned to Larry. He's going to reach out to the estate agent and get the survey booked. Larry will call up within a day, get a survey booked in. You'll get an email letting you know the time and date of the survey, and then within 2 days after the survey is complete, you'll get an email with the written report. So the reason we ask for payment up front is it speeds up the whole process, it just makes everything a little bit more streamlined. It means we don't have to ask our customers to deal with bank transfers afterwards. We don't have to play that game of, oh, we've got the survey ready, but you have to pay us first before we send it across to you. It's paid up front and everything just moves quickly after that. It's part of the reason why, I should say, we've the quickest turnaround time in Ireland, is because we simplify that by taking payment up front. Having said that, if for any reason if for any reason you just don't have your credit card on you and it's really urgent, call us or email us. We're really responsive. We understand people have all different circumstances and we'll accommodate you. But if you're booking through the website and you want everything just to go through quickly, we ask for the payment up front. And then we're under pressure. Can you guarantee? So we're under pressure. Can you guarantee your turnaround? So we talk a lot on our website and on our social media channels about how we're the quickest turnaround time in Ireland. So how we do that is when you say you book a survey in Carlow, I think we have 3 surveyors who cover the Carlow area. When you book, we'll check to see which surveyor has the next available slot. The survey will be assigned to them. And so by doing that, we always guarantee, okay, your survey is always going to the next available surveyor in that area. And by doing that, it makes sure that, we're not waiting on one surveyor that covers all of Carlow to deal with 20 surveys. And so we won't have your survey for 4 weeks. We've built this whole process. It's myself and my co-founder Owen. We come from a software development background. That's our expertise, and that's the platform we've built out. And it speeds everything up. It makes sure that we have a really low turnaround. There's less admin work for the surveyors. There's less phone calls, less chasing up for you to do, and it speeds up the whole process. And so our average turnaround time over the last year and a half has been under a week. Sometimes it goes up to 7-8 days, especially if for whatever reason the agent can't arrange access earlier than that. But most of the time it's under 5 working days, and there's no other house surveying company in Ireland can offer that. So yes, we can guarantee our turnaround times. If it got to the stage where we just got swamped and we didn't have enough surveyors to turn it around, we actually put a message on our website to say, look, we're busier than normal in Donegal, and so the survey may take an extra week, and you'll see that before you book, so you're fully informed. And that is the end of our episode on house surveys. I really enjoyed going through those questions, partly because these are questions we get all the time. Every single day we get a few of these questions sent at us, either through our social media channels or through our customer support team. And the reason we get these questions all the time is because, first time buyers don't know what a house survey is. They don't know the details of it. And so they're going to have these questions, that they need to ask. And, we're always happy to answer those questions that might seem silly and trivial, but in reality they're not. Buying a house is, for most people, the biggest decision and the biggest purchase you will ever make in your life, and it's incredibly important that you get the information you need and the people you need to help you along that journey. I won't talk any more about Get House Surveys, but what I will do is tell you a little bit about what else we have in store for season 2. So season 1 was an incredible success for us. We started this podcast just as a way to try to help some people through the house buying process. We spoke to we spoke to insurance brokers, we spoke to mortgage brokers, we spoke to people who had been on the house buying journey themselves, and they shared a lot of their tips. And in season 2, we've talked about house surveys already. We're speaking to some solicitors. We're going to be speaking to some people who've gone through the self-build process and they've built their own houses. We're going to talk to some people who have remortgaged and hear their experience. And the thing I'm most excited about is we have at least 4 people lined up this season to talk about their own house buying journey. So people who have been through the journey themselves. Some of them have absolutely incredible stories to tell. And when you listen to some of these people and what they've gone through, it will give everybody hope, that they can get there in the end. So that's what to expect from this season. We're incredibly excited that we could start this again. As always, if you have any questions we'd like to touch on this show, send an email to podcast@GetHouseSurvey.ie. We'll do our best to include that in the show, or we might just reply back to you with the answer. You never know. And until next time, have a great day.